It was a pleasure to burn. Those are the immortal opening words to the dystopian warning that permeated Fahrenheit 451. As a writer, I abhor censorship of any kind, no matter the words. Those words are hard to say out loud after you find something that seems to be created for no other reason but to play to the author's peccadillo. This mad musing looks at the game famously banned from Gen Con back in '82 for bad taste. I'm talking about the infamous Alma Mater RPG. Does the game deserve its bad reputation? Does Harvey Weinstein have a slightly used couch to sell you? I'm Mr. Welch, and we're going back to school. Alma Mater was published in 1982 by Oracle Games Limited, with Steve Davis and Andrew Warden as the authors. Errol Otis famously did a large amount of the art, with Owen Alton getting artistic credits as well. The game is 48 pages and never saw a supplement, making it a one-book wonder and one of the most famous RPGs in its day, for all the wrong reasons as well. A complete copy of the game runs about $300 on various websites, and even copies in poor conditions will still demand at least $50. Note, this is all for collectors. I don't know anybody who actually plays the game. So now that I've been talking about the game's poor reputation for a minute, what makes it a bad game? Because the subject it covers is high school, specifically starting at freshman year high school. In-game, you're looking at players aged 13 to 16 normally, and the game's subject matter focuses heavily on drugs, sex, violence, and similar topics. It's not shoved down your throat like other games, which take the topics way too far, but when you start to comprehend what you're actually playing, that's when you realize the game has a lot of rules for sex and all the characters are jailbait. It's not just the underage sex part. The game is aged like a Bill Cosby milkshake. It's got a very juvenile vibe, as if the entire game was written by Beavis and Butthead. It's that kind of humor. I don't think the authors meant to make the game as creepy as it is today, but shock value is a huge part of the game. It has rules for M16s and other firearms in a game about high school life. The rules for hardcore drug use are surprisingly comprehensive. The worst part is while this game comes off as a teen fantasy from the late 70s or 80s, there's far worse games in the same vein. This is a game that predates Columbine by almost 20 years. I don't think the authors even considered school shootings as a reality when they wrote the rules for shootouts in the school hallways. The game uses 7 different stats that you generate by rolling 7d10 and distributing the rolls where you want. This can lead to some almost unplayable characters if you roll badly enough. They even have a class for people who didn't roll over a 4, the loser class. They're restricted to just a few skills, can't take any skills that would make you friends or change the fact that you're a loser, and of course you can never have sex because no one likes you. I'm not making that up, it's in the rules. Other classes include the brain, the jock, the cheerleader, the tough, the criminal, and if you're purely average, you get to play the average kid. Each of these have specific requirements, except for the average kid. If you want to be a jock, you need a strength of at least 8, a 7 coordination, and a 6 appearance, for example. Jocks can only be male, and they have to be above average in appearance, because high school football coaches always judge potential players on their looks. Once you've got all that done, calculate your constitution, which serves as your hit points, and determine your social status. This again is arbitrary. Only students, brains, and average kids can come from rich households, which might shock a few cheerleaders or jock kids I grew up with. Once you've got that, see if there's any problems with your character. The more attractive you are, the less of a chance your student is flawed in some way. Ugly kids, those with an appearance of 4 or less, automatically roll on the flaw chart. You can get results anywhere from being too tall, to missing teeth, to being a psychopath, to being badly burned, to being gay, to having a chance to drop dead of a heart attack. Because everybody knows that ugly people have an increased chance of all of those and more. Once you check to see if you're a horribly disfigured freak that no one likes, then you go on to your skills. Most of the skills are automatically assigned to you. Only the average kids get to pick skills. Everything else is mostly determined with no variation. A few classes get 1 free skill that can be anything, but if you want to be a band kid, that has to be one of your free choices if it's allowed. If you want to be in theater, chess club, or the Welch team, sorry, they forgot those skills. Once you figure out your skills, get used to them because you don't get any new skills for another year of game time. You only get to test skills every September, and even then you aren't guaranteed to increase any. Then you head to the charts to determine what a random day is going to be like in your school, or how people will react to your teenager's actions. There are pages of charts in this game, and the game quickly becomes overly complicated for its subject matter. Comedy RPGs, which this game definitely tries to sell itself as, needs to be simple to keep the players interested. Having to go through a chart with 17 modifiers to see if your parents are mad at you is going to get tedious quickly. There's also a long list of potential NPCs with their equipment and skills, and then reaction charts for the same NPCs that take up a quarter of a page. This obviously feels like padding because of the amount of almost pointless charts. You've got a large section on combat, which again feels bloated as the weapon list has over 50 possible things to hurt people with, divided into lethal and non-lethal categories. You can mildly annoy your enemies with a tennis ball, or go full-on dead alive by running them over with a lawnmower. You would think that having an assault rifle in a game set in a high school would be in very poor taste, but then you look at the rest of the weapons on the chart and realize that the M16 is pretty tame in comparison. The game was written at a time where blowing up the school was just a lyric in an Alice Cooper song instead of the reality that sadly became later. Yes, it's in bad taste, but there was no malice in it. The one piece of art where the kid is shooting the rifle has him imagining he's Sergeant Rock, and his target is something only in his imagination rather than living creatures. The game has an expansive section on sex and drugs. It's like the only thing the writers paid attention to in high school was the Nancy Reagan Just Say No commercials. They list off a whole host of narcotics, sort many of them by quality, and then give you a chance to overdose. The sex rules run the gamut from asking the girl out to getting into her pants. There's a 20% chance of pregnancy, and keeping a steady girlfriend is going to be quite difficult. This part of the game gets really creepy the second you realize all the characters are going to be under 15. Pedo vibes tend to ruin a game for most people. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the art, because that's what the game's notoriety is largely from. It's classic Errol Otis, and it's unsettling to look at. Most of the characters depicted look like Hollywood teenagers, as in they resemble somebody who's a lot older than supposed to be a 13-year-old, like in their 20s. The art includes graphic violence, lots of uncanny valley, and his depiction of black men assaulting another student in the bathroom is just badly drawn. The cover, oddly enough, features a character that resembles a drugged-out Michael Jackson, though the book was released before Michael Jackson started to look like that. It was a common complaint about the game from what I've read, but the timeline doesn't match up, as Michael Jackson was going full-on Thriller in 1982. The art includes nudity. It includes blood, where a guy is getting his throat cut. It has a graphic depiction of a guy shooting up heroin. And this is 1982. This is the beginning of the Satanic Panic. This is not an RPG that was going to be well received by the people that think we were all going to hell for D&D. I would have to say that the art is a major problem on why this game has such a bad reputation. That does conclude Alma Mater. It's tacky, it's tasteless, it's almost unplayable. But a bit of its poor reputation is people applying the sophomoric humor to today's tastes, which is unfair. Are you tired of being locked up in your house waiting for this virus to end? Are you at wit's end? Do you feel like putting on hand puppets and pretending to be a classic cartoon character and letting fidget spinners decide your every action? Then, man, do I have an RPG for you. TSR's Bullwinkle and Rocky game. That's right, the makers of Dungeons & Dragons created a licensed role-playing game in the world of Frostbite Falls, and you can live out all your cartoon fantasies in it. At least without people staring at you. Well, at least not as much as you did it without warning. I'm Mr. Welch. Welcome to my Mad Musings, where today we are playing Moose and Squirrel. Bullwinkle and Rocky was created in 1988 and written by the legendary Zeb Cook. Sue Myers did the art, and was done in the style of the classic cartoon, so it's deliberately simplistic. As much as you like the show, Rocky and Bullwinkle was not known for its art. What this game is known for is the puppets. Since you are only playing the characters from the show, you are provided hand puppets, so you can show which character you are playing. Not that we wouldn't already know. Okay, to be completely honest, this is not a game you play sober. This game has no creation system. You are playing one of the characters from the show, not just Rocky and Bullwinkle, but there's Boris and Natasha, Dudley Do-Right, Snidely Whiplash, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and a whole bunch of other characters you've probably forgotten by now. It's a storytelling game at heart. You pick which setting you are playing in and then dole out the characters as needed. You can adventure in Frostbite Falls, Canada, the Fractured Fairy Tales, the Aesop and Sons, or go historical with Sherman and Mr. Peabody. Then you start piecing the story together. Each player is dealt 5 story cards with the rather large deck of plot points, and then you start telling the story. When it gets slow, somebody can play a card from their hand to introduce a plot point. The plot cards are all over the place, with things like drugged drinks, brilliant ideas, the guide to everything good and true, a valuable inheritance, or you have Mr. Big making an appearance. The game is cooperative, so everybody is trying to contribute to the story. The other part of the game that people will remember is the spinners. This is a diceless RPG, years before Amber ever came out. Each character has a spinner that determines success or failure. The format is beyond simplistic. You spin the dial and hope it lands on yes. If it does, then you succeed in your task. If it lands on no, you fail in your task. There is a greater chance of landing on no than yes, and the less important the character was in the show, the smaller their chance of success. Quite literally in this case. The game is at heart a comedy RPG. There's no death. For that matter, there's no hit points or anything similar. The narrator determines the results of a failure, but it's never anything crippling. You're trying to capture the spirit of the TV show, though getting the biting social commentary is usually not required. As the game is largely cooperative, the point is to have fun. You aren't leveling up Rocky to a second-level squirrel. He's always going to have the same abilities every single game. The characters do have some variation in their abilities. Each one has advantages and often a disadvantage. Rocky can fly and he's nimble, but he's also a terrible judge of character. Bullwinkle is strong, can remember anything he ever ate, and can predict the weather, but he's dumb as a brick. These are, of course, for storytelling purposes. If you're trying to power game an RPG that has you wearing a hand puppet, maybe you need to rewatch the part where I tell you not to play this game sober. The rules aren't complicated. The rulebook itself is only 16 pages long. Remember, this is TSR, the king of bloated rule systems. But considering the game also kept the written parts to an absolute minimum, there's probably a reason for this. The rest of the books are a setting book, which is also equally brief, covering Frostbite Falls, and there's another book consisting of plot ideas to play with. There are some funny props, like diplomas from the Ukrainian School of Lockpicking and a diploma from What's a Matter You, but again, these are just props, they're just for fun. The game itself is easy to find, it's not in great demand. You either have to be a massive Rocky and Bullwinkle fan, and you're collecting it for that reason, a TSR completionist, or you're looking for a decent game that you can play totally blotto without worrying too much about looking silly. Unless you're playing Sherman and Mr. Peabody and you decide to resolve some daddy issues right there in the front of the entire store as you decide to go into self-therapy and explain to your hand puppet pseudo-father all the mistakes he's made raising you and you've never earned his love despite all your attempts to please him. I am sure that helped Chris out in ways that he no longer needed to address, but let me tell you, that was a bit jarring for the rest of the players at Frontier Games. But I digress. If you want to go out and buy a copy of Bullwinkle and Rocky, it's on eBay, brand new, for about $25. The problem is it's about a TV cartoon that started in the 50s. And it's been out of the public eye for some time unless you watched that movie a few years back that no one will admit they watched. I mean, how many Gen Xers are showing this cartoon to their kids, or the boomers to their grandkids? If you have fond memories of the show, it will take you back to your childhood, but it's a tough sell to younger crowds. Unless you just want it for the hand puppets and spinners, in which case it's a steal. This is one of the shortest Mad Musings I've done, if not the shortest. Bullwinkle and Rocky is deliberately simplistic. There's no expansions. There's not a nuance for a game about a 60-year-old cartoon character. You put on the hand puppets, you draw the cards, you spin the spinners, you weave your story. The props are certainly a huge plus in the game's favor in terms of collectivity, but if you have no interest in the setting, it's just a curiosity. Humor often comes with an expiration date, especially if it's tied to pop culture references. Not everything stays in the everyday vernacular for any length of time. Slang falls by the wayside. Films fade from memory. For every "May the Force be with you," you've got "Nanu Nanu," "Frackin' Toasters," and "Bitty Bitty." This is the fate of Hackmaster, the subject of today's Mad Musings. It arrived at exactly the right time, was born with incredible luck and incompetence, landed with a splash, and is largely forgotten even after a Kickstarter relaunch. So what made this a flash in the pan? I'm Mr. Welch, and sharpen your Hackmaster plus 12. Knights of the Dinner Table was a comic strip released in 1990 about a group of gamers and their antics. It started as a typical 3-panel strip featuring B.A., Dave, Bob, Brian, and Sarah as they managed to deal with real life and their antics in the game Hackmaster, which supposedly in-universe is an overly complicated version of D&D. The comic book is still in print 35 years later, though Jolly Blackburn, the author, has accepted help in continuing the storyline as he tries to manage Kinzer & Company. Just to put how impressive that is that it's been going on for so long, when Knights of the Dinner Table debuted, Spider-Man had only been around for 28 years. So it makes sense for them to try to make an RPG based on their fictional game. The only problem was that D&D was still the 800-pound gorilla in the room, even during TSR's death spiral. But then a mistake was made. TSR licensed Knights of the Dinner Table to appear in Dragon Mirth in their magazine, which is one reason why it became so popular quickly. TSR paid Blackburn money, and he gave them comics to publish. But then Wizards bought TSR, and the agreement with Kinzer ended. But Wizards kept using Knights of the Dinner Table strips they didn't have rights to. That is what we in the Royal Navy refer to as copyright violation. Lawyers got involved, but a solution was agreed upon. In exchange for overlooking the copyright issues, Kinzer would be permitted to publish a parody of 1st and 2nd edition D&D. So in 2001, Hackmaster 4th edition was born. Don't look for the 1st to 3rd editions. In the comic strip, they played 4th edition, so the actual game started at 4th edition. While this was supposed to be a parody, it was also a passable fantasy RPG for those who liked their rules with a lot of crunch. The comic book version of the game was insanely complicated, leading to things like a monster attempting to grapple, discovering how complicated those rules are, and then just attacking normally. If the strip made fun of one of the rules, that poorly written rule was in the official version. If a typo was mentioned in the comic, you also better believe it was included. If you didn't know that this was intentional, especially if you weren't familiar with the comic strip, you would think the game wasn't well written. Many in-jokes tied to decades-old comic strips that new players will miss. This is where the game tried to thread a needle. They wanted to keep it a parody, but a fully functional fantasy RPG. Those usually don't end well. Look at Tales from the Floating Vagabond, which tried to do both and ended up with some comedy gold with their stories, but had a system that didn't support the mechanics well. Hackmaster went the other way. As the game progressed, the comedy was sidelined for better mechanics, and the intentional overly complicated rules were often pared down to improve gameplay. It's only fun to roll a D10,000 a few times before the humor wears off. Hackmaster unintentionally became one of the first OSR titles in existence because of its timing. When it hit in 2001, 2nd edition D&D was only a few years dead. 3rd edition was all the rage, and 2nd edition was an absolute mess in its dying days. Hackmaster filled the gap for people who still wanted new products based on the 1st edition rules. And boy, did they get rules. Hackmaster's Player's Handbook came in a staggering 400 pages, and the Dungeon Master's Guide at 368. The Monster Manual, or Hacklopedia of Beasts, was broken down into 8 different books. To compare, the 1st edition Player's Handbook was only 128 pages, so it's almost quadruple the size of the book that it's parodying. Enough of the history. How does it play? Surprisingly well, actually. If you want a rules-heavy simulation-style game, that is. If you just want to roll dice and kill things, you're going to be in for a very bad time. Just a fair warning, you have to be in the mood for this type of game. It shares large chunks of 1st edition rules and 2nd. One significant change is that all stats share the percentiles rule, not just strength. So you can have a wizard with an 18 double-odd intelligence. This even includes comeliness for everybody who wants to keep track of their appearance. Honor is no longer an optional rule, and getting too much of it's a bad thing. They have a chart for tracking how much honor is too much honor. Then again, they have a chart for everything. Only Rollmaster outdoes them on charts. All of the things that were dropped with the death of 2nd edition are back, including racial caps on classes. If you want to be a half-orc cleric, you stop at level 4. You are meant to multi-class, or take multiple classes at once and divide your XP between them. But once you cap on a class, you're still taking the XP penalty for something you can't advance any further. Many classes are restricted to just a few races, like Cavaliers being only open to humans, elves, and pixie fairies. Sorry, half-elves. Stat requirements are also a thing for classes, and even if a class is allowed for a specific race, the adjustments and requirements mean that it's still almost impossible to play certain race-class combos. Half-ogres can technically be knights-errants, one of the best fighters in the game. But due to their -3 to charisma, it's impossible to meet the knight-errant's prerequisite of charisma 17, unless you spend a lot of build points to qualify. That means you are buying a lot of flaws. Still, it's worth it if you just want to play sirloin of beef. Hackmaster is written like somebody was trying to channel Gary Gygax when he was writing Tomb of Horrors, which is odd because they could have just called. The game was written years before the guy died. It repeatedly tells players that the DM's job is to kill them, and while they have more hit points than D&D classes of similar level, the critical hit rules means that any attack can be lethal. I would say the overly complicated critical tables, but in Hackmaster the term overly complicated is redundant with just about all of the rules. It points out that it is the most excellent RPG ever written, and everything else is a sham, which is precisely how the fictional designer Gary Jackson would describe it. I appreciate a game that is unashamedly confident in its design. Several races in Hackmaster were invented for the game. Grells or Grunge Elves, as is appropriate considering this game was conceived in the grimdark darkness of the grimdark 90s, though flannel is not required. Half-ogres make their start here, as do pixie fairies, gnome titans, and gnomelings. These come with a bunch of special rules, from the gnomelings' increased stealth abilities, the pixie fairies' immunity to surprise and their wings, and the gnome titan's spectacular affinity for stomping the groin. They have 2 paragraphs of rules devoted to stomping the groin, including art showing exactly how it looks when a gnome titan stomps your groin. Try finding those rules in 5th edition. The game includes several rules that increase the complexity, such as the flaws chart, where you can showcase your min-maxing skills by trying to get the best combo that gives you the most points at the least risk. When you level up, your stats increase with a percentile dice. When you reach over 100 points, you subtract 100, increase your stat by 1, and start over. Leveling isn't automatic. You must undergo training, which can take weeks and cost a good chunk of your gold. Armor and shield have limited hit points. You will need to constantly fix them or buy new armor to keep up your armor class. There's an entire paragraph on the rules for apologies. You do earn coupons for good play, and the DM could wipe the party with his coupons. If you get your honor high enough, you could become a hack class, which is like a regular class but on epic scale. The alignment system took alignment violations so seriously they had 3 pages on dealing with that. One thing that Hackmaster did that set it apart from other D&D clones of its day, and even modern games today, is it has an extensive supplement list. Every class gets its own book. There's numerous adventures, there's guides to the gods, guides to certain races, and even a parody of Spelljammer. Granted, all the books just increased the game's excessive complexity, but there were players for this type of game. Nobody puts out that many books and is still in business decades later with even more books. While Hackmaster 4th edition wasn't for everybody and had a small niche audience, it was a devoted niche audience. A lot of people played Hackmaster just to say they did it. It was marketed as a comedy game. While it lacked the wackiness of games like Paranoia or Teenagers from Outer Space, part of the fun was discovering just how complicated the rules could get. The modules weren't half bad, with a decent layout and mostly well-designed. They were all parodies of existing D&D modules like Annihilate the Giants, Slaughterhouse Indigo, and Robinloft. But they were entertaining parodies. So skip forward to 2009. The jokes have been told. More importantly, the license for 2nd edition D&D is running out. So what do? You update it to 5th edition with a Kickstarter, of course. Introducing Hackmaster 5th edition with all new rules, very little comedy, but preserving some of the absurd complexity that defined the original edition. There was an introductory set with the Hackmaster Basic, and the Kickstarter was successful, or else we wouldn't still be talking about it, would we? So moving on to the future tense of the game based on the old rules. 5th edition has major changes from the previous versions to avoid copyright issues. Combat was changed to dueling dice, a system I'm not in favor of. You roll a die to attack, they roll a die to defend. Add your modifiers, and high roll wins every single attack. Fancy and magic has been replaced with spell points, and the most significant diversion was character creation, which was now point buy. I'm unsure if that's ever been done successfully with a level class system, but I'll give it this, it's different. The only one that I could think of that was similar was Alternity, and that didn't end well. The game keeps the percentile stat increases. Not all classes are available to all races. Races pay different amounts to be each class. While a half-orc pays 35 points to be an assassin, a halfling pays a staggering 75 points for the same class. Multiclassing is considered a core class right from the start with its own abilities. There's no chopping up the XP into each class like the days of old. Hackmaster 5th edition prides itself on its slower, more fluid play. By slower, I mean you don't shoot up in levels as current-day D&D or Pathfinder does. Characters can respond to changing events in the game rather than waiting their turn. It prides itself on being harder, not just to play but also to survive. While min-max is to be expected, this is Hackmaster after all. It's not always about the biggest bonus to hit, because even a low attack roll can succeed if the enemy hoses their defense. Granted, if you're rolling hot for defense, you're going to be about as effective as Martin Brody areas versus Disney on Ice. The 5th edition is going to be harder to sell to players than 4th edition because it's such a radically different game. The point-buy system didn't work for me. If you're going to open up classes to just about everybody, why punish certain classes with a cost that's prohibitively high? You might as well just ban it. 4th edition was familiar to old school players. 5th edition is an entirely new system to learn with no references. One minor gripe with 5th edition is the art, and this is very minor. To save money, they used classical art that has long fallen into the public domain. That's not the complaint. I admire somebody who brings back the classics. You are listening to a man who went through the Uffizi giving a guided tour to his family showing off all the different forms of classical and Renaissance art, talking exactly like this. But if you're going to talk about the classics, credit the artist. They've got the Police Verso by Jean-Léon Guérôme, an Accolade by Edmund Layton. Put their names in the credit. It looks impressive when you've got a smattering of house artists in the credits and suddenly there's Rembrandt in there for some reason. I'm still wondering how nobody has made a monster manual of Hieronymus Bosch's works. Those scream Fiend Folio number 2, and you wouldn't have to pay a penny for all the art. Hackmaster 4th edition is available on the second-hand market for about list price. Some of the adventures can be hard to find, and certain items like the DM screen are very hard to acquire. 5th edition is currently on sale on the Kinzer website. That's Hackmaster. 4th edition was an overly complicated quasi-parody that tickled a few funny bones. 5th edition is a straight mishmash that barely resembles its source material and strips out the laughs for a more serious game. When you want to watch a movie really badly, you want to watch a really bad movie. That was the motto of the North Texas Movie Depreciation Club, a group I was proud to be a founding member of a full 20 years ago back in my Dallas days. They taught me to appreciate the utter dreck of cinema, be it U-Ball's total disregard for quality, Ed Wood's habit of replacing enthusiasm for talent, or Friedberg and Seltzer's habit of just spamming out complete crap. Okay, appreciate is the wrong word. Endure is the better word. But what if you could relive those crappy movies and make them better? That's the premise of Stellar's game One Book Wonder. It came from the Late 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 Show. It's a multi-genre game, so you can recreate the unwatchable train wrecks of Highlander 2, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, Jim and the Holograms, or Pulp Fiction. I'm Mr. Welch, and these are my mad musings, and today we are going back to the movies. It came from the Late 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 Show, is from Stellar Games back in 1989, with multiple reprints up to 1993. There was a follow-up book that expanded on the original design, but the main book was a complete game that you could play from the start. It's not a complex game. Since it was based on a comedy, you didn't need a lot of rules, and the Late Show met those requirements. The basic mechanics of the Late Show is you're all actors on a series of Z-grade movies. In short, you're a dude playing another dude. If your character dies, you just grab another character in the movie and play them until the adventure is done, and in the next adventure you get to use your original character again. It was a bit ingenious in design terms. Death is a risk, but it's not permanent. There's a bit of a disconnect because the actors gain skills in real life that translate into the game, like learning how to fight with a sawzall. But this game relies heavily on the MST3K mantra, that remember it's just a game and you should really just relax. There's 4 stats in the game to start, plus survival points and your fame rating. Character creation and gameplay is all done with D10, so roll 4d10 for each of the core stats, assign them to build, brains, dexterity, and looks. Your fame starts off at 0 because you're a nobody, and your survival points are a calculated stat. Then you get to roll your skill points, and that's where I had to reread the book several times to make sure I was reading it right. And I was. So remember when your friends asked you why you needed so many dice? Well, this is the game you can show them, because for your skill rolls, you roll 20d10. 20. I did not stutter. Keep track of each individual roll because you're going to apply those dice to different skills in the game. You can apply multiple dice to the same skills, but you can't go over the cap of 100 to start. So all you White Wolf players, now is the time to show off your D10 collection. Mechanics are pretty simple, as it's just a standard percentile system. The monsters that you're going to be fighting only have a few stats. They have their survival points and the FX skill. The better the special effects, the deadlier the monster. You roll the FX skill for all attacks and all skills, and the damage is a set amount. Any special abilities will be detailed in the monster's description. It's not a game where you're going to spend a lot of time trying to min-max. The beauty of the game is the fame system. This represents your actor's influence over the movie. The higher the fame, the better the wardrobe, the better the props, and the better the roles you get in the movie. All the actors are terribly typecast, so you're going to play the same character in every single movie. Doesn't matter the movie, they will rewrite the script to make your character fit. Have you ever wanted to play Lord Humongous in Showgirls? Here's your chance. Fame gives you an extra chance to avoid death, because more famous actors aren't killed off as easily as nameless extras. Because the game has a total grindhouse feel, there's a lot of fourth wall breaking. Every character gets to invoke a commercial break once per game. This means the actual game stops for 60 seconds, and the players get to quickly come up with a plan with no interference from the storyteller. Another aspect is the stunt double, which is exactly like it sounds. Before you take damage, you can call on your stunt double, who will take all the damage in that action for you. The problem is your stuntman can't regain health during the movie while you can. If you use up your stuntman, all the remaining damage in the movie is going straight to you. Another option you can try, once per movie, is to try to walk off the set. If the game is about to do something you don't like, or something happened to you that you didn't want to happen, you can make a fame roll and try to get the results reversed. Fail, and you've wasted your roll. If you pass, however, the results of the encounter are completely changed. The monster turns out to be allergic to water. The hillbilly pawnbrokers decide to start with the crime boss instead of you. The danger is that this applies to certain monsters. So if you manage to easily defeat the Mad Slasher in the straight-to-video classic, the Black & Decker Pecker Wrecker Part 7, he can roll his FX to start the combat all over again, and this time he's beefed up. Your last remaining option for fame is a last-ditch effort that's only for the truly desperate, and that's the film break, where the film literally breaks. You can only do this once per game, ever. It forces the cast to permanently burn 1d10 fame points that can be split up between the cast on who's giving up what, but whatever happened in the last scene is completely written to the cast's favor. Sure, it isn't shown on screen because it's a film break, and the scene then cuts to the aftermath where everyone is safe and sound and the monster is defeated, but you have to take the cast's word for it. They beat the bad guy and everybody got away, and they're not going to say anything to the contrary. Fame is the true measure of success in The Late Show. At the end of each movie, every character gains 10d10 and new skill increases, but fame only goes up if you did a great job in the movie. You don't have to survive the movie to gain extra fame. You can actually get bonus points for going out like a boss. You get bonus fame for making terrible decisions that furthered the plot and the fun. You get points for excellent role-playing, for sucking up to the director, or coming up with a new way to defeat the big bad. If the director has to use a deus ex machina, like the military showing up unexpectedly, or the big bad forgetting to kill the heroes when he had the chance, your fame does decrease. The book isn't that long for a rule book, but the number of monsters it has in it is insane. Just about every horror, sci-fi, and fantasy cliche from the 80s and before is here, in trademark-safe language, of course. Do you want to fight a disgruntled NHL hockey player with a knife fetish? He's in there. How about a flambéed dream killer? Yep, definitely you got him. There's singing plants that happen to have a taste for human flesh. A mute William Shatner cosplayer has a write-up. There's even rules for killer tomatoes. This book is just so expansive in the number of bad guys it throws at you. Because of the simple rules and the fact that as long as there are bad movies, you've got a plot this game will never get old. There's always going to be bad movies. And one of the beauties of this game is the way the rules are written. You can replay good movies badly, and that's always a possibility. Bad acting is rewarded in the late show, and taking scripts off the rail is practically demanded. How would you like to have Ripley at Hadley's Hope bugger out and turn the movie into a legal thriller as Burt gets set on trial? That's easily done. You could combine the best parts of Die Hard, Saw, and Mary Poppins. Not a problem. Recreate 12 Angry Men using nothing but Gary Oldman characters. This is a game that writes itself. You just have to supply the characters. It came from the Late Show, varies wildly in price, but if you're patient, you can find a copy for less than $20. There's a sequel to it that gives more adventures, but the main book is standalone. It does have 2 adventures in the main book, but you're just going to want to rerun movies you hate or love. The sequel I found for just over $10 on some used book sites. It's not a book that's in demand. If you want a one-shot game, this is a perfect game just for that. If you have gamers that are movie buffs, or you just want to fix a long-hated movie in your own particular way, there's no reason why you shouldn't pick this game.
The one thing we can appreciate the British for is their humour. That and the fantasy writers. The 2 things we can appreciate the British for are humour and fantasy writers. Plus the pageantry. The three things we can thank the British for are humour, fantasy writers, and their glorious pageantry. Plus the best evil villains to ever grace the stage or screen. Alright, among the many contributions we are grateful to the British for are humour, fantasy writers, pageantry, and villains. And the best punk bands. Alright, starting over. There is something different about British humour. The best examples combine snark, deadpan, social commentary, and often outright lunacy. This leads us to today's Mad Musings, Monty Python's co-curricular Mediaeval reenactment program by Exalted Funeral. A new comedy RPG that hasn't hit the shelves yet, well, at least unless you ordered it on Kickstarter. So does this game manage to capture the sheer insanity of the Pythons, or does it need to bravely run away? I'm Mr. Welch, and squad, camp it up! If you're wondering where I got my British accent, well, it's one half of the fact that I've been sick for a week, but I learned my actual one from numerous gamers from all parts of England over the years. How's from Workington, a lovely little town up north, with a smashing game called Uppies and Downies that I recommend you check out all their videos. The entire town gathers to play the sport, where the object is to get to the ball to the docks or the church and throw it up in the air 3 times. I've just given you all the rules. It's a pleasant diversion to play in a quaint English town on Good Friday, but not in your DM's living room. Desmond came from London and always had the best food, like spaghetti with mustard on it. You gotta take his word for it, though. Stormy invited me to Blackpool, where he told me all about all the bars and nightclubs I would find most impressive, at least until I informed him that I wasn't gay. Then he invited me to lovely sunny Liverpool. So I picked up bits of all their accents, and some I learned from drama class, and merged them into the abomination that you're listening to today, and I'm going to keep them for this entire video, because I bloody can. Monty Python's humour is best described as taking a normal situation to its most ludicrous extreme. A cheese shop without cheese, a painting of the Last Supper revealed to have 28 disciples and 3 Christs, the use of lethal humour in WW2, a poor lady waiting to order breakfast only to be interrupted constantly by musical Vikings, and of course a store clerk who can't admit the parrot is bleeding demised. So how do you capture this brand of madness in an RPG? By making it as random, lethal, and chaotic as possible. This game might not be for the serious gamer, but find me a serious gamer wanting to play a Monty Python RPG. The game's core concept is you're playing characters in a BBC medieval television program, complete with a cast of characters straight out of the Dark Ages, circa 932 AD for some reason. Despite what you might think, this is not entirely focused on Holy Grail. Instead, it incorporates elements of Flying Circus, Life of Brian, and Meaning of Life. How in the blazes does that make any sense? Well, it doesn't, and that's the point. You just have to roll with it when you bloody peasants having to encounter the Mafia, space aliens, Ralph the Wonder Llama, Biggest Dickus, or a giant cybernetic penguin. It's not going to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. In fact, the less sense it makes, the better the game's going to be. Adding to the lunacy is the fact that the Game Master also has a character representing the BBC's head of light entertainment, or the Whole. The Whole is typically a character from the Flying Circus, but there are a few from other shows. Every time a player is punished, you roll on that particular hole's chart to see what happens, from instant death to changing the show's format to getting letters of complaint. Too many letters of complaint and the hole gets fired and a new one's determined. Yeah, even the Game Master's character can die in this game. You have to remember what each hole likes and play along with their rules. The hole can punish you for boring play, stalling tactics, or rolling too well. The audience likes drama. If you succeed at everything, you're going to make them change the channel. But this is England in the 1970s, so your choice of channels is BBC 1, 2, 3, or 4, all of which are simulcast in your show. The mechanics for MPC, MRP are dueling dice. When you face off against a foe, you roll your die, he rolls his, and the defender wins ties. If you fail, your opponent will have a set of results that will occur. For climbing or general skill tests, you roll your die and try to get over a target number. The catch is this game requires special dice, specifically the D14, the D16, the D18, the D30, and everything in between. There are 18 different stats, and you get to pick 5 of them, the rest of which you always suck at. If your class has a retainer, you only get 4 skills, but your retainer gets to carry stuff. Each skill is set to a particular die. If you roll the maximum on the die, you get a merit, you move up to the next highest die of your skill, and you get to re-roll that 1 and add it to the total. If you roll a 1, you get a demerit, and you're relegated to the next lowest die. And remember that rolling too well isn't appreciated by the whole. And this is the part of the program where I remember that I forgot to talk about the technical details of the book, so I shall need a good spanking later. MPC-MRP was funded on Kickstarter because what game isn't these days? You can pre-order it there with a wide variety of add-ons. I was given most of these add-ons for the review, which will not influence me in any way. Mainly because this is not the young ones RPG. I mean, come on, how can you not be influenced by a show that suddenly has Motorhead appear in your kitchen? God, I miss Lemmy. I once watched him play chess with himself on stage and win with both black and white at the same time. The game's creation is accredited Brian Chabot and Craig Schaefer, not to be confused with Craig Schaefer, the lead actor from Nightbreed, which is sad because that would have been a very cool coincidence. The game is a respectable 348 pages, which is even more impressive as they use every single page of this, going so far as printing the index and table of contents on the fly paper. Art is a combination of fantasy stock art from centuries ago, saving them quite a bit of quid there, and some of Terry Gilliam's favourite sleep paralysis demons. Send all complaints about the cover art to Keith Lowe. Now back to our regularly scheduled review. Creating a character is quick and straightforward, which is a good thing because this game's going to give Paranoia and Call of Cthulhu, aka COC a cock, a run for their money regarding the title of most lethal RPG. No matter how hard you try, there's always a chance you're going to get squashed by a giant foot. There's also lots of death randomly flying about, and there's a good chance you're going to catch a rather fatal case of it. There's also a fantasy chart, in case you want to follow in the footsteps of many ill-fated cock investigators and go flat-out balmy, which might be stealing from that game's mechanics a bit too much, but can you blame them? What game designer worth his notepad doesn't love cock? If your character snuffs it, you immediately take control of your retainer or a random background NPC and you're back in the scene. To make a character, simply pick your class and follow the instructions. This will require you to select a few particular skills, assign a predetermined spread of dice to those skills, take note of which skill you're banned from taking, jot down your starting death and loony traits, fill in the background information on your character detailed by the individual class, and then your character. This would have been a hell of a lot easier if they'd put those instructions in order. For a churl, you fill out your profession, knights need to pick their particular idiom, troubadours have to compose a sonnet, and they're ready to play. See, easy enough to replace that hapless sod who didn't know the capital of Assyria was Nineveh. Every class has a unique special ability called the Spiff and Sirius ability, a chart that they can invoke at any time. You roll on this chart, pray to God that the results apply to the situation. I said pray, not grovel. Sometimes the result is bad, sometimes the result's spectacular. Each result has a particular recharge result, so if you're lucky, you can use this ability multiple times if you get the right results. The absolute gonzo results reset at the end of a session, so there's always the chance that this is a one-time option. After that, roll on a chart for every skill you picked, and you get an accoutrement to give you some sort of bonus. Everything from a bird whistle to a letter of marque to a monolith from Stonehenge, so bring a card for that one. And now a word from our sponsor. Hunger. It gnaws at us, constantly growing. It consumes us lest we feed it, but then it is only a brief respite before its return. It will hurt you, it will anger you, it will weaken you. Your only options in the face of this constant demand are either giving in to oblivion or its demands. I cannot help you if you choose the former. For the latter, you do have several choices. I do not recommend the obvious solution. That is how you get Wendigo. Instead, why not try Taco Schnell, Deutschland's finest Tex-Mex restaurant? You can sate your endless pangs with our specialties, like our Schnitzelritos, pommes frites fajitos, Sauerbraten enchiladas with our famous pickle habanero sauce. For dessert, our Black Forest churro are muy wunderbar. For those on a budget, why are you eating out? You would save so much cooking for yourself. We will not judge you. Your banker will do that for us. But I understand. You are lazy. Fine. We will cook for you. Try our all-you-can-eat platter. What we put on your plate, that is all you can eat. Happy? I did not think so. That is why you need to come here with more money. So come to Taco Schnell. Mach rapido. Now that you've got the players set, it's time for the whole to get their act together. You've got to randomly determine which GM character is going to be the starting whole of the evening. Most of these characters are taken from Flying Circus, and it would be helpful if you watch that particular sketch to get an idea of how to play each one. Each hole has a list of likes and dislikes and a set number of demerits that trigger a roll on the Schööl chart. That chart's a custom list of possibilities for each hole, some beneficial, some painful, a few lethal, and of course there's a chance the BBC decides to change the program format, or you get the dreaded letter of complaint. If the number of letters received reaches the hole's limit, they are sacked and a new one is generated. If the Beeb decides that your show sucks, it will be replaced by a randomly determined new show in an entirely different style at great expense and at the last second. In case of a format shift, everyone has a random skill reduced to D4 and can choose to roleplay the latest show, which restores the penalized skill and reveals to the BBC that the new show is worse than the previous one. Instead of dragging out the cast of Red Dwarf yet another 3-episode series, they put yours back on the air. You don't need to know much about British politics, sports, or children's interests, or anything else that's going to happen like that, and it's probably best you don't. If all else fails, just complain about the current Doctor Who scripts and everybody else will understand. I mean, come on, BBC, it's Doctor Who. Equal parts action, comedy, and horror all wrapped into a single show. I've got over 100 episodes on DVD, from An Unearthly Child to Capaldi's second season. You might say I'm a bit of a Whovian. My first episode was Robot on PBS Channel 8 at noon Sunday. Yeah, that's number 4's introduction, and I was hooked. I had no idea what I was watching back at the time. It was in the 70s, but I had to get more. And now you done mucked it up. Don't tell me Doctor Who isn't for everybody. Doctor Who is most certainly for everybody. It's a family show. I didn't care for In the Forest of the Night until I saw a room full of children mesmerized by it, and I realized it doesn't matter what the episode is, it's somebody's favorite. I mean, how do you screw up Doctor Who? It's not like England doesn't have a whole host of brilliant fantasy writers. Neil Gaiman might have turned out to be a tosser, but you can't tell me the Doctor's wife wasn't sci-fi perfection. Find some actual science fiction writers. Most of the good ones today probably already have a few hundred bits of fan fiction and they're just waiting for your call. After all, it's the second thing we appreciate the British for. I might be too much of a Yank for your taste if you're looking for a script. But if you're curious, Daeth fi Nelo or real and Mil Saith Pedal Pum. So I think you can grandfather me in. Alright, back to your regular scheduled programming. Again. The gameplay, as you can expect, is a bit trifling, as it makes things as confusing as possible to keep things interesting, and also as an emergency psychological treatment for your cat. The game uses 10 different currencies and doesn't provide a conversion chart for any of them. I highly recommend you use the 1960s British currency system, as we're all familiar with how they used to break down the pound pre-decimal. I don't have to explain it to you. Just remember there's 17 eggs to a gold piece, 6 3/4 acorns to a naughty pitcher, 14 dead plague bodies per upper class twit trading card, and 94 tubs of Wizzo butter and a gemstone. See? Easy enough. Gameplay is creative anarchy, where you have a defined goal and you get rewards for completing your tasks. It's not easily done when one of your characters suddenly finds himself Pope. God can pop in to get your opinion on the merits of first-class cricket compared to limited overs, and you know how heated those discussions can get. There's a random chance you get kidnapped by aliens and must help them settle the marital differences. There's a slight chance the Hall completely botches his job, gets demoted to actors, and one of the players gets promoted to the new Hall. And what player doesn't love the new Hall? While no plan survives contact with the enemy, few games of NPC MRP survive initial introductions. More than a few will end up with everyone in their underwear chasing around some randy fat guy while an out-of-control saxophonist plays cheesy jazz in Trafalgar Square while time speeds up for all involved. At least at the end of that little bit of lunacy, your nipples do tingle in the most delightful way. There is an extensive collection of NPCs and monsters wanting to harm your characters, some wanting a bit more than others. Each has a die type and a number of deeds required to best them to defeat them finally. You can decide what skill you're going to try to beat them with. You have to roleplay the encounter, then you roll the appropriate die and the high roll wins. It's that simple. If you fail, there's a description of what happens next, usually a bit of death or loony. For the more fantastical or famous types, of course, it's a bit more complicated. The harmless little bunny, upon winning, decapitates whoever rolled the lowest to defend against it. As it always goes first, someone's probably going to die at least once around. This bunny can one-shot Cthulhu. It's in the rules. All the usual Holy Grail characters are here, as NPCs, antagonists, or in the adventure. There's also a host of medieval characters from Flying Circus, and even the space aliens from Life of Brian. Use them in the funniest ways possible. There's no long campaigning in this game. The sheer lethality guarantees it. Characters can be made in a couple of minutes, but you're going to need some erasable character sheets for the more challenging adventures, as you're filling up the dead cart rather quickly on this one. It's meant to be rapid-fire comedy, and even rewards players that willingly play the straight man, at least for a few of the holes. characters are replaceable. It's normal for you to create new characters to fill in the role that got the previous one killed. You can sacrifice retainers and accoutrements to avoid wounds, and even heal with the abilities of some of those classes. Of course, rolling on the mushroom chart to see which one you got's a bit of a gamble. Still, when you typically only have half a dozen wounds at best, you know you're only one bad roll away from shuffling off the mortal coil. This is a book that needs to be passed around. If nothing else, the random charts and sidebars are hilarious, if not completely useless in the game. The random answer chart for NPCs has 4 answers: yes, no, I don't know, and an entire paragraph discussing the effects of quantum physics on gravity. You're free to use any of the charts for any reason, if nothing else to add a random element to your game. There's several references to all the movies and a few Monty Python adjacent movies, such as the Not Jabberwocky. You don't have to know Monty Python by heart, but it would really help. Holy Grail's a definite must-watch, because you're going to take most of the majority of their content from the movie. There are asides to other films and quite a bit of callbacks to Flying Circus, especially for the whole. It's a bit of a pricey game. The main book is $50, but you can need to spend $20 for the custom dice and $30 for the screen. There's a set of merits and demerit tokens for $20, and you're going to need to spend about $100 for all the alcohol necessary to play this game proper. I do give some profound respect to the DM screen, as it's very well built, thick card stock. It's got moving parts, and it's got all the holes to slot in so the characters know who's in charge of light entertainment. It even has a pop-up god and an on-air sign to let you know that you're playing the game right. Just be sure not to avert your eyes or depress him with those miserable psalms. That's Monty Python's Cocurricular Mediaeval reenactment program. It stands to be one of the most memorable comedy games written, but you gotta be a fan of that kind of humor. You're a gamer, more than likely you've already got Holy Grail memorized and you know all the lyrics to the Lumberjack song. It's got a bit of a learning curve, as this is a game where you pass around the duties of the whole, even mid-game if the results call for it. It's well put together, it understands the assignment, and doesn't try to bog you down in the rules. The formatting for character creation is a bit of a boggle, as it seems to be out of order in how you're supposed to put things together. On the death, no death side of comedy games, this is very much in the death camp. It's probably funny if you're British, but most of us can fake it. If nothing else, you can cross-pollinate your games, unleash a naughty vicar on Bridgerton, or take a vacation in Murder in Paradise, and shoot that body count through the roof.
Greetings, troubleshooters. I am Mr. Welch, and today we are talking about one of the funniest, at least intentionally, role-playing games of all time, Paranoia. Please only listen to this recording if you are of blue security clearance or higher. Listening to this recording, if you are not blue security clearance or higher, is treason and punishable by death. Please report immediately for termination. Originally published in 1984 by West End Games, Paranoia is an extremely dark role-playing game where you are taking on the roles of troubleshooters in a deeply disturbed utopian society after the end of the world. Though what caused the end of the world, that's above your security clearance. Alpha Complex, where you live, is run by Friend Computer. Friend Computer is insane. Pointing out that Friend Computer is utterly insane is treasonous and subject to summary execution. Paranoia can best be described as Catch-22, the role-playing game, because this is not going to have a happy ending. It is the most lethal role-playing game by far, making Call of Cthulhu look like a Mickey Mouse cartoon, because this game is so lethal you start with 6 clones, and you will burn through all of them. There were multiple editions of Paranoia released. I think there's one that's still currently in print. The second edition is considered the crown jewel of the entire series. The 5th edition, there was no 3rd or 4th edition. The 5th edition has been disowned because it took away a lot of the satire and parody and turned it into just slapstick. So what makes the game such an all-time classic is just the premise and just how ludicrous it is and how much of a no-win situation the party usually starts in. The complex has Friend Computer. Friend Computer is absolutely insane. Friend Computer is a paranoid schizophrenic on the lookout for communists, mutants, and traitors. The problem Friend Computer has is all of the clones have long since mutated. Just about everybody is conspiring against the computer to get what they want. And the computer is actually running a communist society. But its logic and reasoning has been so screwed up over the many, many years that it can't tell that it's running a collective civilization and it's telling everyone where they have to live, where they have to eat, what they have to do. The computer sees this golden utopia and doesn't realize that everything's gone horribly wrong. Anyone that tries tries to point out or contradict the computer to explain that the society is extremely dysfunctional is immediately executed for a traitor, because the computer is always right. So most of the fun of the game is trying to do what you want to do and blame all of the problems and setbacks on the rest of the party, so friend computer executes them and not you. And a large portion of the fun is the computer is so scatterbrained and schizophrenic that it will give you orders that will contradict themselves, or orders that are way above your clearance, so that all of the instructions are blanked out or redacted, so you don't know what you're doing. You're just going to a certain area with orders that you're not allowed to read, and you have to figure out what the friend computer wants, or friend computer's going to start executing people. Adding injury to insult, you always have to take stuff from R&D, which gives you the latest tech that they've just developed, which of course is always going to malfunction at the worst possible time. Even mundane equipment will often malfunction or have some sort of horrific, lethal alternate use. If you shake up a can of bouncy bubbly beverage and throw it, it will explode like a grenade. If you get a can of Happy Laffy Fun Fizz, the refreshing alternative to bouncy bubbly beverage, not that bouncy bubbly beverage needs a refreshing alternative, you will discover that it reacts badly to laser fire. And by what I mean by reacts badly, I mean it turns into a fueled air bomb. Your laser rifle is good for 6 shots. Every shot after the 6th one has a 5% cumulative chance of causing the gun to explode to end killing you. You can go to requisitions for more equipment to try to help you with the mission, but there's always a very good chance, okay, there's almost a 100% chance, they're just going to give you whatever they have a surplus of at the time. Of course, everything in Alpha Complex is color-coded, and you can't go down a higher security clearance corridor if you are a low security clearance. So if you're red, you can't go down an orange corridor, because orange is higher than your clearance. One of the greatest modules of all time was Yellow Clearance Black Box Blues, which was known for its lethality, especially during the first mission. The first mission was going down the wrong color corridor to get to the mission briefing, and that was pretty much the only thing you had to do in the first part of the mission. Body counts would hit the dozens as you have to get down this corridor, and the only way to get through the corridor is basically come up with a way that the DM can't outwit you or thwart you. So you have to be extremely creative or sneaky, or just have somebody else do it for you. Pinning the blame on other players or other NPCs for your own failures is a time-honored tradition in Paranoia. In fact, it's pretty mandatory. Speaking of mandatory, one of the most famous phrases in Paranoia is happiness is mandatory. See, the computer wants everybody to be happy, because if you're unhappy, that means it's doing something wrong. If the computer is never wrong, you can't be unhappy, because that would mean the computer is wrong, so therefore you're wrong. So if you're being unhappy, you're doing it to spite friend computer, and because you are doing it to spite friend computer, that's treason, and therefore you will be terminated for treason. So how do you keep yourself from being unhappy? Well, there's a lot of ways. First off, you can take drugs, because the computer loves to hand out drugs. There are so many happy drugs that they don't even have names for all of them. They have mechanical happiness aids, which will stretch your face into a smile until you are permanently happy, because if you continue to be unhappy, it will rip the top of your head off. And using R&D issued equipment to achieve humorous results while not exactly encouraged does increase happiness. Or of course you could do just what I do and just fantasize about lovely, lovely doughy-eyed Winona Ryder all day. So you get your mission. If you have any luck whatsoever, you understand your mission. So you go out, everyone is given a team position. You've got things like team leader, you've got happiness officer, you've got cleanliness officer, you've got the media officer, there's a few others, most of which have no purpose whatsoever on any mission you will ever go to. Then you indulge on the insanity that is Paranoia, where everything requires paperwork, where nothing ever works correctly. If you want to get replacement cap for a tube of chapstick, it's a 7-page document for the requisition form. Everyone's a member of a secret society that's trying to take over Alpha Complex, and because of that, everyone in the party is trying to outmaneuver everyone else. Now, coming back with a lot of dead people is usually treasonous, because you're wasting friend computer's resources, so you have to convince friend computer that they were traitors or communists or mutants, at least mutants that weren't registered. And if you can do this, and then you can execute them, then you get bonus points, and maybe you get promoted. So yes, you're on a mission with 6 people, all with their own motivations, all with their own goals. Nobody trusts each other. Everybody knows if you don't complete the mission, you're all going to be executed, but you all realize that whoever gets credit for completing the mission or being the one that succeeds on the mission the most is the one that's going to get promoted, so it's all a matter of competition there, out and out. Second edition is considered the best edition because it was the one that had the most satire. Granted, this was the 80s. This was the middle of the Cold War. This was Ray Gun Ronnie fighting the godless communists. Paranoia XP focused more on terrorism than communism because, let's face it, the Cold War is a little outdated for at least pop culture right now. However, if your players will do a little bit of reading so they can understand the paranoia that was during the Cold War, they will completely understand what makes this game so funny. I mean, this is Joe McCarthy on the Marx Brothers levels of funny. Paranoia is a love child between Adolf Huxley and Douglas Adams. Paranoia is very much a thinker's role-playing game because if you want to succeed on your mission, you're going to have to be smarter and more conniving and more backstabbing than the other 5 members of your party who are trying to outthink, outconnive, and backstab you better. Troubleshooters will be sent on missions that have no obvious goal or they're not allowed to see what their actual mission is. They will be sent on missions that are absolutely impossible because if you complete the mission, that means you would have had to commit an act of treason and therefore you will be executed for succeeding. A lot of the humor is trying to fail the right way so that you can blame somebody else in the party for failure so they get executed and not you because the computer will think that it was because of their incompetence that they failed. But if you do this too well, friend computer will promote you and send you right back out on the same mission. Paranoia missions will go off the rails almost every single time because first off, most of the missions are impossible. Second off, most of the players are trying to figure out how to get out of the mission in the first place. You can't railroad a paranoia mission because that's the whole point, is the players are trying to get out of the mission in the first place. They'll try to complete their own missions. They'll try to pawn off the missions to other people. They will try to complete an aspect of the mission and then try to convince friend computer that they've completed the entire mission. And the computer's so scatterbrained, it may not remember exactly what mission it sent you on in the first place. You'll go on a mission and find out something even worse is about to happen, so you have to stop that, but then you don't complete the first mission, saving Alpha Complex from the second mission. And while people have complained about when Paranoia goes too slapstick, which was a major problem with 5th edition, a lot of the times you can replace what is seemingly a normal mission with just something completely out of the blue. Troubleshooters can go get sent to fix a faulty speaker and find themselves serving as process servers in a trademark violation suit between Haster and Voldemort over the phrase "he who cannot be named." You can have your automatic chewing gum dispenser gain sentience and decide to take over Alpha Complex, and you have to stop it before it turns the entire Alpha Complex into a gooey, sticky, sentient bubblegum dispenser mess. They can walk through the wrong door and accidentally stumble into the mirror universe Alpha Complex, where instead of friend computer, you have the lovely, benevolent, and immortal Winona Ryder ruling over everything, and everything is just a perfect paradise, and that's where we all want to live, but then you have to get back because then you realize friend computer will invade this if you don't shut down the door. Unfortunately, forever cutting you off from the wise and benevolent gaze of lovely Winona, who would have showered you with praise and accolades you justly deserve. This is the one game where mechanics count the least, because it's in the rules in several editions that if the players ever discover how the rules actually work, you are obliged as the storyteller to change the rules. So you can change the mechanic system any way you want to at any time. You can make it stat plus skill, you can bounce dice for target numbers, you can make it acts of physical endurance, you can have Winona Ryder trivia contests, my favorite, or settle every conflict with games of rock, paper, scissors, Lizard Nixon, Spock, King Henry VII, Southern North American, Flying Squirrel. The only rule that applies in Paranoia is the rule of funny. If it's funny, then it's allowed. If it's not funny, then you get executed and you come back with a clone that should be funnier. Death is a constant in Paranoia. You're going to die. You're going to die a lot. Other role-playing games, they will tell you about all the glorious deeds their characters did, and Paranoia players will tell you exactly how their characters died. The more entertaining the death, the better the game. Now, don't turn it into a kill-em-all unless that's the kind of game you're going for. We did a Paranoia Call of Cthulhu crossover at Alcon once, which ended up with 486 deaths, shattering the previous convention's record of player deaths by about 480. You have to set the players up into just ludicrous situations that somehow connect to their mission. The more pointless and silly the death, the better. You can have them killed because they confuse petroleum jelly with jellied petroleum. Next scene, they die because then they confuse jellied petroleum with petroleum jelly. Players will get trampled to death by Emperor Marmosets. They will be shot by the Death Star in self-defense. I've seen one player expend all of his clones walking through doors. The first door was the unmarked door to the nuclear power core. The second one was an ambiguously labeled door to the nuclear power core. Then an ambiguously labeled door to the nuclear power core, an overly complex description of the door to the nuclear power core, then the correctly labeled door to the nuclear power core, and the sixth one was an automatic door that opened up as he walked by. You keep the players on their feet because anything is lethal, and generally everything is lethal. If Mel Blanc wrote 1984, this would be a large portion of it. And you want to adapt the game to previous failures of the party. So if one of the party members throws a grenade, to have a mutant commie traitor pick up the grenade and throw it back. The next time the computer, to prevent them from throwing it back, will give them a grenade that detonates immediately as soon as they pull the pin. If they fill out the paperwork wrong, friend computer will interrupt them in the middle of a firefight to ask for explanations on the portions of the form that you did not fill out correctly. If you do extremely well and take out a nest of communist mutant traitors and bring down secret societies and all the rest, have the computer reward you by promoting you several times, then executing you, because you are dealing with communist mutants and traitors which are well above your clearance level. You can't win in Paranoia. The computer is insane. The computer makes no sense. There is no logic to half the jokes in the game. You just roll with them. This is a game where bootlicking is a physical skill. If you're running a game, you have to keep it fresh by keeping it spontaneous and unpredictable. That's the beauty of Paranoia. You don't know what's lethal, you don't know what's safe, you don't know is going to get you killed in the mission debrief. Don't go too heavy into the slapstick. I know that's quick and easy and great for laughs, but you really want to play off of the fact that the party hates each other and is trying to get each other killed, but convince the computer that it was that person's fault they got killed, that's why they got killed. Half of the conversations with friend computer when you are trying to explain to him that the situation has gone snafu completely, but doing it in a happy, charming, and completely disarming way, and also blaming somebody else in snide remarks while you're doing it, is a good chunk of the fun. And there's so much wrong with Alpha Complex. There's always comedy fodder. For example, everyone has been pumped full of hormone suppressants, so you're all these kind of androgynous clones. Of course, a huge chunk of the humor for that is occasionally the hormone suppressants don't work and suddenly everybody discovers sex. Of course, sex is treasonous, but trying to put down an entire sector full of people basically going through their teen years and discovering what all the bumps are for, and your troubleshooters who have no idea why everybody's behaving this way because your hormone suppressants still work, makes for a really funny adventure. Now, if one of the clones that suddenly developed a resistance to the hormone suppressant looks like the lovely Winona Ryder, I would understand completely if you derail the entire campaign to try to save her and to get her out of the Alpha Complex and back outside into the world where she can resume her rightful place as ruler of the entire globe. So there's a few editions kicking around. You can find 5th edition, which is almost all slapstick and generally regarded as the worst of them all. That one's actually pretty cheap. You can get that one on eBay for next to nothing. Bear in mind, it's pretty much Looney Tunes. There's even no rules for experience. Once you make your character, you play them until they die, then you make another character. Paranoia XP is still largely available in stores. You can get that for list price. The crown jewel, of course, is 2nd edition because that was the one that fixed all the overly complicated rules from 1st edition, because in a game like this, you don't need a lot of rules. 2nd edition also did After the Crash, which was Paranoia without a lot of the humor, which went over like a lead balloon. It didn't have the friend computer, didn't have the R&D giving you crappy stuff. It made no mention of Winona Ryder at all, so it's not considered a really good one. So you take out After the Crash, you take out 5th edition, and then you've got XP or you've got 2nd edition. There's the 25th anniversary edition, which came out. You can get that for list price. I know there's a focus more on terrorists than communists, but trust me, stick with the communists, because the communists in this game are not like the Russians of the 1980s. These are the guys with the big, tall fur hats with the fake mustaches, and they're parodies of what they thought communists would look like, especially during the 1920s. It's funnier to poke fun at the communists than the terrorists because they're just caricatures. Paranoia is considered a one-joke game, but it's a really funny joke. You get thermonuclear hand grenades where you can throw it 30 feet and then it takes out 2 square miles. Even better, you have the random roulette grenade launcher, which has 20 different grenades, and every time you pull the trigger, you roll on a chart randomly to see which grenade you fired, everywhere from a paint grenade to a thermonuclear hand grenade, all the way up to a healing grenade. So yes, you can heal the people you're shooting at. And then also there is the cheese distribution grenade for getting cheese to people far away. That's another grenade I liked. And not cheese like overpowered weapon, I mean cheese like string mozzarella, because it was a grenade that actually exploded and puts mozzarella into everyone's mouths. Of course, all the grenades look exactly the same and none of them are labeled. You can't get too bizarre in a game of Paranoia. If a player gets too troublesome, just kill off the clone, issue them the next clone, that way they can reflect on the failures of their previous clone. Of course, death is extremely cheap in Paranoia. It can be as simple as walking by a door that opens up to a nuclear reactor core with no explanation of why the nuclear reactor core requires 6 doors. Friend Computer has lasers that can come out of any part of Alpha Complex to execute a traitor. Remember that. Friend Computer was watching. Friend Computer is always watching. Failing that, they can always just open up a closet door, and there, in all of its glory, is the most beautiful picture of Winona Ryder with her dewy-eyed goddess look. And then the troubleshooter will stand there for several minutes staring into those just eyes that you can just drown in, and realizing that they will never see anything more beautiful than what they are looking at right now. And they will self-terminate knowing that Winona Ryder gave them the one true moment of happiness that they never knew they would have and they will never have again, and they just can't go on knowing that this is the highlight of their entire life and it's only going to go downhill from here. Seriously, Winona, I have been watching your career since Lucas. You gave me the fetish for brunettes with short hair. I don't care if you dye it blonde on occasion. I even liked you as a blonde in Edward Scissorhands. I don't care. I like everything you're in, even How to Make an American Quilt. Just give me a call sometime. We'll go down to Poison Girl in Westheimer and play some pinball, or just sit around and talk for hours until the sun comes up and realize exactly what's been missing in our lives, which is each other. So anyways, that's Paranoia, an extremely funny, very dark game. It's not for everybody, because like Comrade Stalin says, dark comedy is like food, not everyone gets it. You're not going to survive the adventure. You're probably going to die several times over the course of every single adventure. Instead of other games where you just keep going from adventure to adventure until you get bored of the game and then everybody quits or moves on, chances are everybody in the party is going to die just trying to figure out what the damn adventure is. There's a reason why this is considered one of the greatest role-playing games of all time, and there's a reason why after, 30-something years, it is still considered the best comedy RPG of all time. What you do in the game doesn't matter. How you do it matters, and that's the glory of it. Remember the first time you saw something that would impact your life and you instantly fell in love with it? How you thought it was the greatest thing ever and you desired more of it, and every second you spent with it just made your life that much better? Then you see that somebody made something that involved the thing that you loved, but when you got that new thing, it captured none of what made the thing that you loved special. Welcome to Mad Musings, where you get to hear me ramble for the next several minutes about the Red Dwarf RPG and all the missed opportunities. I'm Mr. Welch, and if you're William J. Murderface, get ready for your favorite thing: disappointment. I've said this countless times. Licensed games are usually lacking in multiple departments because the company either can't branch out legally and fill in the gaps in plot or setting, or they get cut woefully short and everything they wanted to talk about is left out of the game because it was never put into the core book and the additional source books never get to materialize. For Deep 7 Press, the problem is the former. Red Dwarf came out in 2002 and had one more source book that covered the entirety of the 7 seasons of the show, with most of the internal imagery consisting of production stills, and then the game ended. The first thing you're going to notice about the game is how simplistic the mechanics are. It's a stat plus skill system that's inverted, where you want to roll equal or under the target number on 2d6. That's not a lot of range for a mechanical system, where the average roll, of course, being 7, that's still only a range of 11 numbers. Snake eyes are a critical success, and boxcars are a critical failure. There's a variety of races that have limits on their stats, including holograms, robots, and a variety of genetically engineered life forms. The book does branch out from the evolved animals in the show by adding the rabbit, mouse, rat, and iguana to the dog and cat races that were already canon. The game is set on the titular spaceship, where you are the surviving crew left alone in a galaxy where everything is slightly askew. Granted, you can change this up as you want, but the impression given is that the players are looking to recreate the funnier moments of the show in this game. And granted, there are a ton of funny moments to recreate. The game gives you a lot of characters, locations, and villains from the show as can be expected, and there is some advice to adding comedy to the game. That last part is important because, well, it's a comedy RPG. Red Dwarf's humor isn't easy to copy. Madcap humor, if done poorly, becomes too busy to process correctly. For humor of this sort, typically you need a straight man to mediate the comedy, and nobody in most comedy RPGs wants to play the straight man. For this reason, you don't find many comedy RPGs that go straight madcap. There's a reason why the Marx Brothers had Margaret Dumont in 7 of their movies. A huge portion of Monty Python's success was that any of them could play the straight man in any given sketch. The role of the straight man is largely going to be played by the Game Master, who's called the AI in Red Dwarf. Just remember, there's a reason why the straight man got paid twice what the clown made in vaudeville. Dying's easy, comedy's hard. For combat, Red Dwarf goes with characters being nearly indestructible. They can be injured plenty enough, then injuries can be quite amusing, but death is actually quite difficult. That's a good line to straddle in comedy games. Players don't want to worry about hit points when they're trying to get a good laugh. Surprisingly enough, dealing with lethality in comedy RPGs is a major sticking point. You can always turn the characters into human punching bags like Toon or Teenagers from Outer Space, or you can go in the opposite direction and make death grotesquely unfair and hilariously easy like Paranoia does. But for a game where the hologram characters start off dead, you have to find a balance. There is still danger for the players, but it's more of the you get knocked out of this scene rather than it's time to roll up a new character. One aspect you will need to remember if you play a game like Red Dwarf is to keep the comedy fresh. The show rarely recycled characters, even well-remembered bad guys only appeared once on average. It kept the jokes coming at a non-stop rate, so if one episode fell a little flat, the next one tried something entirely different. Having an overarching villain is always an option, but the game provides you with 10 pages of various backgrounds and threats from the show, so use as many as you can when possible. Don't flood an adventure with too many different threats unless you're doing a gang-up episode for a change, though. The game does have a surprisingly comprehensive starship combat system, which is admittedly a little out of place in a game where an unarmed mining ship was the main setting for most of the show. There's a variety of different ships presented, all of them of course from the show, with one exception. But despite the rules for ship combat, only a few of them actually have weapons, and only one of them could even be considered anything close to a warship. You can use ship-to-ship combat to break up some tedium, or to kickstart an adventure that requires pirates or similar villains. There's a lot of secondary characters from the show in the main book, though most of them appear in the supplemental season guide that covers the seasons 1 through 7. Ace Rimmer, Alpha, and Captain Hollister get about a page each, along with some crew members from Season 7. For bad guys, you get a page each on the Inquisitor, Legion, Mr. Fibble, and the Emo Hawk. Of course, it wouldn't be complete without full stats on Lister, Rimmer, Cat, and Crichton, with Kachansky getting equal treatment, even though she only appeared in the 7th season as a primary cast member. If somebody isn't familiar with the show, then these names mean nothing to you, so it's your civic duty as a geek to force them to binge the entire show over the next 50 hours. They will thank you later, after they get some sleep. One thing that is glaring reading over the book is the amount of jokes they tried to cram into it as asides when describing the rules. I lost track of how many shots the writers took at Captain Hollister's weight. I get that that was a running joke on the show, but after a while you're just beating a dead horse with the same joke. The asides quickly become unfunny, as it feels the writers were just trying too hard. Granted, I will give them that the joke about Rick Mayall ascending to a higher plane of existence did age well due to his tragic and sudden passing, but the joke about Welsh miners rioting is going to fall flat since most people can't pick Wales out on a map. For most people, it's the Canada of England. Without a reference, the joke goes right over their head. There's 3 books that were released for Red Dwarf: the core rulebook, the Game Master screen, and the series source book. The core rulebook goes for over $100 on secondhand markets today. The source book is so rare I couldn't find a copy for sale, but people did want $100 from the previous sales that I could find. You might get lucky at a used bookstore, but if your used bookstores are anything like my used bookstores, don't hold your breath. It's almost 2 decades old, it's considered a collectible, and is more likely going to be read than played, but such is the fate of so many licensed games. That's the Red Dwarf role-playing game. The mechanics are simplistic, character generation is largely limited, and there's not a lot of guidelines to creating new adventures rather than just living out the same previous episodes of the show. This is not a game you're going to make a campaign out of. If you want to do some one-shots for your friends, it's adequate for that. Comedy RPGs are hard, and this one is competent enough, but fails to capture the madcap antics that made the show a classic. Players all want to be the funny one, but somebody's going to have to at least try and be serious long enough for the jokes to land. That's not an easy thing to do. This marks the 49th Mad Musings since I started this channel. I reviewed games from dozens of publishers of varying quality and fun. You guys really like this review. They are by far some of the most popular videos I make, which explains why I hit 4,000 subscribers today after I started making these with more regularity. Special thanks to Jeffrey Pearson for donating to the Get Newer Books for Review Fund so I can look for newer books. If you like these channels, please like and subscribe. If you want to help defray the cost of getting new books, my PayPal is in the description. Thanks everybody for watching, though. Because of you, I'm going to do something special for the next video. RPGs aren't easy to get right. You need to keep expanding the line to keep the game interesting, but without flooding the market.
It's a lazy day here at the Welch family stead. The fact that it's coming down in buckets ain't helping matters. So I headed down to Half Price Books to see if there was any little-known games for a decent price, but like it always is, it was 50% 40K books from previous editions that nobody wants to buy, 40% Pathfinder books, of which there were 20 copies of just 5 different books, and 10 books left that were just supplemental books for long-dead games nobody played. So I'm sticking with my schedule for the Mad Musings with the wonderfully comedic Teenagers from Outer Space. I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to flash back to the dream where you're in your underwear in the middle of high school again. Teenagers from Outer Space, or more affectionately just Tifos, is a comedy RPG by Artel Saurian Games dating back to 1987. It's written by Mike Pondsmith, the same guy that gave us Cyberpunk 2020, and the same guy that's giving us Cyberpunk 2077, so I will wait patiently for my Teenagers from Outer Space 2077. There's 3 different versions of the game, but the changes are minor, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick up. There's a few third-party adventures for the game, but it's largely just a one-book wonder. But what a wonder it is. The plot for Tifos is paper thin. The best summation I've ever heard is 1 second in the future, the aliens attack. 2 seconds into the future, we counterattack. 3 seconds into the future, we surrender. 4 seconds into the future, the Earth pulls out its surprise victory. 5 seconds into the future, the aliens surrender. And 6 seconds into the future, we start bussing. The entire setting is in a high school where humans and aliens of all sorts try to get through what's essentially a typical high school, with tons of anachronistic classes, jokes, and several repeated memes that are individualized for each student. Every student has both parents along with an annoying younger sibling, which makes it really funny when you're playing a xenomorph, a teenager. Your mother's the queen alien, and your annoying little brother Jimmy is a facehugger. You've got a car, but unless you've got enough money, it's going to be a used, rundown heap of junk that your parents gave you. Gym class doubles as Marine Corps boot camp. The local mall has a walk-in Death Star by the food court. Any attempt to get some will be thwarted by either parents, authority figures, or just have the laws of physics inconveniently breaking down at the wrong time. Oh, and nobody can die. That's the golden rule. If you take enough damage to be fatal, instead you just stand there and look foolish or embarrassed for a number of turns equal to your negative bonk, after which you completely heal. Continuity is sacrificed on the altar of funny for Tifos. There's 4 types of students at the high school. You've got stock humans, near humans, which are like Vulcans and catgirls, not very near humans like E.T. or Elcor, and the real weirdies, which are whatever you can imagine. There's no rules for race creation. Everybody is equal, though aliens and humans get different powers. Alien powers are things like teleporting, fire breathing, and hulking out, while humans get powers like lots of money, super cute, or have everyone in the known universe on your speed dial. This leads to one of my very minor gripes about the game. Humans have a good chance of having no powers, which isn't that funny. Make sure everybody gets at least 1 power at the start of the game. There's 8 stats in the game, and the mechanics are default stat plus skill. Stats can go up and down depending on what's funny. You have smarts, bod, driving, cool, luck, looks, relationship with your parents, and bonk. The last one's just hit points. Then you've got your knacks or skills, and those are left up to you. You start off with 1d6, which doesn't sound like many, but don't worry, those numbers don't stay low for long. You can have simple skills like fix car and know stuff, all the way up to dodge everything while standing still or transcend the laws of natural science. Just be careful, because the crazier you make a knack, the more likely it will literally blow up in your face. After you get your character built, you have to create your schedule or let the GM do it for you. Of course, the classes quickly go off the rail. Everybody starts with homeroom, so the party will always start together. Then it's off to classes like brain surgery and other minor medical techniques, quantum mechanics, unobtainium and U, advanced death ray construction, and home ec. The funnier the course, the better. The game plays on a lot of teenage jokes that will always be relevant. If you get a rundown car, you know for certain your bitter rival is going to have the latest BMW R5 billion luxury hover car. Of course, if you try to key his car, it turns into a transformer who's also the star running back of the space football team. To win the cheerleader away from the jerk, you have to beat the running back in the illegal street race that evening. Of course, you can always try to hook the running back up with the talking sentient space fax machine that he's been trying to ask out for space prom, so there's always an adventure hook somewhere. One aspect of the game that adds to its humor is that nothing is permanent. Adventures are more like 30-minute sitcoms or morning cartoons. If you blow up the school, mall, or malt shop, it will be completely rebuilt in the next episode. Send your teacher into the sun on a rocket ship with no brakes, back next morning asking for that homework you should have been doing instead of rocket sled races through the Iowa State House. Now, the players will certainly try, but you have to be creative in frustrating them. Have the replacement school fall from the sky directly on top of the ruins of the old one. Have it vomp in like the TARDIS. Have the janitor start blowing up a massive balloon shaped like the school. The mall turns into liquid metal, pulls back together, and reforms a la Terminator 2. Keep the jokes fresh. Frustration is a major part of the game's humor. There's no sex. No matter how hard you try, something will always interrupt you. Your dad walks in. Her mom walks in.
Your dad and her mom walk in. Your date gets leaped into by Dr. Samuel Beckett. Kirk beams down to put the moves on her. The police show up. An Adeptus Astartes drop pod lands on the roof of your car, and you have to give directions to a thoroughly lost squad of screaming gecko space marines. Or in the middle of a particularly steamy makeout session, an APC breaks through the far wall of your den while Hicks, Hudson, Vasquez, and Drake make their escape from the kitchen door to the APC, only for your date to use bug spray to kill the xenomorph that just pops out of the laundry basket before Vasquez can blast it and spray you, your date, Drake, and your dad's prize stuffed moose head with acid. Of course, after the Colonial Marines make their getaway, your dad comes down to see what the racket is. Yeah, that was a pretty messed up session, Dave. The game lives and dies on spontaneity. Fortunately for all, there's just too many jokes lying around with the concept of an intergalactic space high school for the party to be bored for long. The game was retooled to have a more anime feel, but that's not mandatory to appreciate the game. It's just as easy to take any science fiction movie and merge it with any high school coming-of-age story. Merge the funnier parts of 2001: A Space Odyssey with Better Off Dead. The AV Club gets dropped off at the Satellite of Love. You show up to your advanced poetry class and the teacher's a Vogon. There's just too much material for this game not to be funny. One change you need to make to increase the humor of the game is to increase the XP given. Normally, at the end of the game, every player gets voted on from 0 to 3 on how funny they are. Take the average, and that's your XP gain. Well, don't just hand out a paltry amount of XP at the end of the game. Vote on every single joke. Everybody in the game has the cards from 0 to 3. The minute somebody tells a joke and somebody thinks that joke is worth XP, they hold up one of the cards telling you how much XP they get. Everybody throws up their card, you average it out, round down, and that's how much XP they get right then and there. Players get XP constantly. The funnier they are, the more XP they get. That's the theme of the game. Try to be funny. You're not power gaming TIFOs. If you roll too well, the game actually punishes you as things go horribly right. The more knacks and abilities the players get, the funnier they become. You're playing this game for jokes, so the funnier the character, the better the game. Getting the game's easy. It's still in print. It's $20 at Artal's website. The modules are a little harder to find, but you don't need them to play. It's not like there's a continuity for the setting. It does give you actual paper money in the back. You'll need to photocopy it and cut it out, or just go down to the Michaels and buy a pack of fake paper money. And comedy games thrive on props. If you've got $20 and you're looking for something quick and fun to play with friends when the actual game is called off, grab TIFOs. You can't go wrong.
So what happens when you pair a good setting with a bad rules mechanic? You end up with a very mixed bag like Tales from the Floating Vagabond. Now I'm torn on this comedy role-playing game, as it succeeds on the comedy part, but it does fall flat on the game part. The game took so much inspiration from tons of classic pieces of humor like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Three Stooges, and Mel Brooks. The downside is the mechanics took a good chunk of the fun out because unlike other comedy games, you actually had to pay attention to this one. So let's saddle up to the bar, order a singularity. I'm Mr. Welch, and we are now talking about Avalon Hill's Tales from the Floating Vagabond. The game was written by Lee Garvin in 1991 for Avalon Hill. Before they were gobbled up by Hasbro, Avalon Hill was known for their massive board game line. If there was a war that was not turned into a war game by these guys, I can't think of it. So when they announced an upcoming slapstick comedy game, people were skeptical. Their previous RPGs included such convoluted and detailed games like the short-lived Powers and Perils. The Avalon Hill was respected for their historical games, but they weren't your first choice when it came to writing comedy. I will say, when Floating Vagabond hit the market, it did raise some interest with its promise of zany adventures. What we got was a ton of absolutely wacky characters and extremely bizarre adventures. What we also got was some rather slapdash game mechanics. The game is set in and around the eponymous bar where the owner figured out the best way to get new characters is to steal them. I mean, literally, he installed a trans-dimensional door that randomly grabs people walking into other bars across the multiverse. The party can be from any dimension, time, or planet. All that was required of them is they wanted to walk into a bar at some point. Character creation is point by, with the typical stats and some quirky and extremely specific skills like hurt people with panache, hurt people really badly. The characters tend to come with shticks, which are comedic superpowers. There's about 20 shticks with crazy antics like the Escher shtick, letting you ignore the law of physics, the Rogers and Hammerstein shtick, which lets you hear the soundtrack, or create spontaneous choreographed song and dance numbers. And then there's the Rambo shtick, which means all ranged weapons within short range or closer automatically miss you. You can buy a specific shtick or roll one at random for a point discount. If you have to play it straight, you can save a lot of points and not take a shtick, but that goes against the point of playing playing a comedy RPG. The game does have the most comprehensive rules for drinking possibly ever created for a role-playing game. Drinking obviously plays a huge part of a game named after a bar, and some of your skills actually get better the drunker you are. Resolution is stat plus skill, and you have to roll under the total. The more difficult the task, the larger the die you roll. So a super simple task means you're rolling a d4, and the most difficult task means you're rolling a d100. One flaw of character generation is that it gives you increased point buy penalties that are applied to stats over a certain level. But if you weren't going to play, say, a smart Rhino Man, for example, there's no penalty at all because you were never going to raise your intelligence that high. The game also has death as a real threat, compared to other comedy games like Toon or Teenagers from Outer Space, where death isn't possible, or Paranoia, where death is meant to be comedic and actually rather common. As armor isn't for every character in the game, and weapons can actually do a fair amount of damage, you're going to need to house rule this one heavily. Our game had the soap opera rule, where you could come back to life with the application of a quasi-plausible reason why you didn't die, but you still couldn't use the same excuse twice. So you get long-lost twins that are identical to the previous character in every way, mirror universe personas, and of course dream sequences that only applied to you. As long as it's funny, let it go. Now for the comedy part. The game is undeniably hilarious. You're fighting space Nazis with grenades filled with carnivorous teddy bears. You got shticks that let you seduce anything at any time, swing on a chandelier through the stained glass window of a tiger tank, or possess an infinite number of cream pies. It's hard to take a game seriously with skills like look good at all time or the infinitely useful notice obvious. Because the players have access to the entire multiverse, the amount of adventures is only limited by your imagination. You want to run an entire campaign fighting the evil disco Nazis with your orthodox death metal rabbi? Have fun. The game gleefully mixes fantasy, modern, and sci-fi with equal measure, ignoring any continuity errors if it's funny. Session 0 is in the game, so you know what kind of players you're going to have, but after that, planning goes out the window because the game's built on wackiness. You can mix and match genres at will, so if you want to recreate the funnier parts of Board of the Rings and mix it in with the self-aware crew from Galaxy Quest, go for it. There's a lot of modules for this game despite its rather short lifespan. Some of them haven't aged well, like Where's George, because of its focus on the early 90s political scene, but you've also got classics like the Cosmic Paternity Suit or Bar Wars. The modules themselves are worth a read because you will laugh out loud. There's a lot of comedy written to each book from page 1, even though the party won't know half of it. It's hard to game when the game master keeps laughing out loud reading the background information that you can't see. The modules are also huge in scope. They are full-blown multi-stage campaigns for several of them. You do get what you paid for with each floating Vagabond adventure. The massive adventures were also part of the problem with the game. You had to pay attention to play the game. The modules require the parties to take them somewhat seriously. The game is mentioned as a bit lethal for a comedy game, but unlike Paranoia, death isn't supposed to be part of the game. Most comedy games are meant to go off the rails, but Vagabond is the exception. Because of the length of the modules, you're going to have to solve the various clues they give you before you get to the end of the adventure. These can stifle some of the players that want to go off the rails, and it's hard to deny characters who play fast and loose with the laws of gravity or have a cult following among cattle the fun of doing horrible things to Disco Hitler for half the adventure, even if the module needs you to stop the runaway train. Strangely enough, it's easy to find the modules, but almost impossible to find the main rulebook. The rulebook was bound with a weak glue binding, and a good number of the books fell apart shortly after they were played. Finding a good copy of the original book can cost hundreds, even though the PDF was released on Drive-Thru RPG. You can get a playable copy for about $50 online, but there's a good chance it's going to have loose pages. If you find the modules, they will often be just list price, and they are worth a read just for the jokes, even if you never play them. If any game needed a print-on-demand release, it's this one. Now, this is a classic case of great idea, lousy execution. The jokes are non-stop and hold up well, not just the shticks, but a lot of the background material as well. One of the first things that happens in the adventure, for example, is the quest giver shows up at the bar, orders a singularity, this game's version of the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster, and then decides to make it a double because he's stressed. The resulting drink then becomes self-aware. So when a game starts out with the creation of a sentence shot of whiskey, you know it's going to be a treat. When you find out you're going to need to take notes and actually plan out your adventure, it starts to lose its luster. The problem with the game is you literally have to take it serious.